Welcome to the second session of speaking today at the conference organized by ESAANZ. It is the annual conference and the first virtual conference, and we would like to thank the organizers for including this panel on the program. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, Guringai people, who are part of the oldest surviving continuous civilization on this planet. We have a very interesting panel, if I may say, probably the most fun panel of the whole conference, as it is dealing with a subject area very close to the hearts of many Australians. So our speakers today, I will introduce them briefly, and then I will hand over to Alan Tubery, who is going to introduce the topic and also share his presentation with us. Alan's Swiss-German mother introduced him to Eurovision. He is an avid collector of Eurovision 45T. He has been following every single contest since 1961. This is incredible. And he's an official DJ at the Eurovillage and Euroclub since 2013. Sadly, this year, as we know, has been different from everybody. But Alan, in the meantime, has been writing a book on Eurovision in the 70s due to COVID-19 inability of all of us to leave Australia. Alan also has produced some official remixes for the artist and a yearly podcast. He participated at the Eurovision International Conference in Amsterdam as a speaker, right? And also, I would say he is one of the truest Eurovision fans that Australia has ever had. He's a participant observer. He was in many locations entertaining guests and audiences worldwide, and he's also a member of ESAANZ. Our next speaker, Dr. Jessica Carniel, is a senior lecturer in humanities at the University of Southern Queensland. Located within the field of cultural studies, her research interests encompass multiculturalism, gender and cultural representation in Australian and global society. She has published widely on gender and ethnic identities in popular culture in multicultural Australia, including literature, television, and sport. She's the author of Understanding the Eurovision Song Contest in Multicultural Australia and the co-editor of Interdisciplinary Perspectives on Eurovision, Perspectives from Down Under with Khaze, and this is a copy of that. The next speaker is Vincent Colagiuri, who was born in Sydney to an Italian family. He has been a professional musician for over 30 years, working as a pianist, conductor, and vocal coach for Opera Australia, in touring musicals such as The Phantom of the Opera, and he's played in countless classical and popular concerts, which is absolutely incredible, as well as teaching. He is also a huge fan of the Eurovision Song Contest since 1996 and has attended the competition 4 times. So he is the expert on the musical part of this contest, which is extremely useful to all our listeners. We also have Michaela Sowden, who is an Australian-born Queenslander, and she has been following Eurovision since 1971. This was 12 years before Australia officially started to broadcast Eurovision in lifetime. She's a member of various fan clubs, volunteering on the OGAE desk in Stockholm and Kiev, when accredited as a fan, and is a moderator at Eurovision Cafe and INFE Australia, which she can tell us more about. She has been going to every Eurovision live show since 2014 and has transferred her love for the contest to her children. She also has Masters in Nursing and Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Nursing. And lastly, we have a very interesting presenter, Kurtis Carter, who is going to finish his class early. He's a Japanese teacher in his other life. He holds a Bachelor of Arts with a Bachelor of Education, majoring in Japanese, modern history, and international relations, a dedicated Eurovision fan since 2012, and the current secretary of OGAE Australia, which he will tell us about, and this is otherwise known as ESC fan club. He has been on the committee since 2018, seeing the growth and changing surrounding Eurovision in Australia, the living history. His first time in the contest was in 2016 in Stockholm, followed by 2017 in Kiev and 2018 in Lisbon, and the 2019 Junior Eurovision in Poland. Well, yesterday the Junior Eurovision in Poland finished, France won, and Australia sadly did not participate. Over to you, Alan, and let's hear more about this wonderful subject in Australia.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you, Nina. Welcome to Eurovision ESC in the times of crisis. The Eurovision Song Contest, or Concours Eurovision de la Chanson, as it is known internationally, is actually an international song competition organized annually by the European Broadcasting Union and featuring participants representing primarily European countries. Fortunately, Australia has been invited, and we have been participated since the Eurovision in Vienna. It was first established in 1956 in an attempt to reunite the continent of Europe after the hostilities of World War II. Each participating country submits an original song to be performed on live television, with competing countries and casting votes for the other countries' songs to determine a winner. Based on the Sanremo Music Festival, held in Italy since 1951, Eurovision has been held every year since 1956, making it the longest running European annual music festival. But due to COVID, the 2020 edition was for the first time cancelled. As of 2019, 52 countries have participated at least once. Originally consisting of a single evening event, the contest has expanded greatly as new countries joined, leading to the introduction of relegation procedures in the 1990s and eventually the creation of semi-finals in the 2000s. As of 2020, Germany has competed more times than any other countries, and except one edition, while Ireland holds the record for the most victories with 7 wins in total. Performing at the Eurovision Song Contest often provides artists with a local career boost, and in some cases, long-lasting international success. Several of the best-selling music artists in the world have competed in past editions, including ABBA, Nana Mouskouri, Celine Dion, Julio Iglesias, Cliff Richard, and Olivia Newton-John. Eurovision features among the world's most watched non-sporting events every year, with hundreds of millions of viewers globally. This year will have reminded us of 2 essential functions of Eurovision. 2 major contributions, too often forgotten and disdained by its corners. At the individual level, it arouses positive feelings in us. At the collective level, we come together around a happy event. This double experience is the cornerstone of the competition, the one which cements our attachment to it. This is why we follow the contest on a daily basis and why we are unfailingly attached to it, why we love it. We went and are still going through difficult times. We have seen certain foundations of our existence shaken. Values that we thought were immutable have been brutally replaced by others. We have been separated from our families and friends. We have experienced anguish, fears, incomprehension, denial, grief, mourning, anger, and revolt. But Eurovision brought us constantly feelings of distraction, fun, laughter, giggles, good humor, and happy memories. Its rich history, the songs, the artists, the latest informations have allowed us to escape into a better world. And here it is already guiding us, hopefully, to another festive contest in Rotterdam, and hopefully a memorable Eurovision 2021. For some, their days, their weeks have been full of loneliness. We have faced the ultimate test of the social beings that we are. Distance, isolation, prohibition of physical and human contact. It makes sense, but it's nonetheless a difficult ordeal. But Eurovision music brought families and the fans together, brought us closer, gave us the support of the community of interest, passion, and art. Some online concerts were organized, like the Italian artist Diodato at the prestigious Verona Arena. We Eurofans are never alone. We members of Eurovision clubs have never been separated. We rely on our respective presences, our exchanges, and our daily conversations to get over this situation. We emerge more united and even closer to the ultimate test of the cancellation of this 2020 edition. So that's what Eurovision is partly for, to make people happier, to unite them in joy, to brighten up their years. Few of the events cause so much happiness to so many people, and that's what makes the competition all the more valuable. My name is Alan Tubery, and as Nina said, I'm a dual citizen from Australia and Switzerland. Now let's see who wants to start first. Maybe, shall we see? Michaela, are you ready?
Well, I suppose it's as good as any time. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, good. All right. So I'm Michaela. I was actually born in Austria, not Australia. And I'm just talking about Austria at Eurovision, which has a very interesting history. Basically, the very first time Austria was represented was with Bob Martin, whose song Wohin kleines Pony came last, unfortunately, and it was the start of many lasts for Austria within its history. Interestingly enough, the very first person or the very first Austrian that sang at Eurovision was actually Freddie Quinn, who sang for Germany the year before. His placement, however, is not known. So Austria has participated 53 times, or would have been 53 times had this year taken place, has had 2 first placements in 1966 and in 2014. The highest aggregate score, however, didn't go to 2014 to Conchita. It went actually to Cesar Sampson, which I was really surprised. He actually garnered 342 points, I think it was, and came third. The majority of those points, however, came from the jury. The lowest aggregate score was 0, and Austria has the infamous history, I suppose, of being the only host city or host country to actually end up with 0 points. And that was in 2015 with the Makes, which was really sad. They took it on the chin and they did a really lovely little short video about them coming last. Austria in the list of wooden spooners actually comes 5th behind countries like Norway, Belgium, Germany and Finland. And Austria sits on the edge. They don't have any sort of voting partners, unlike, say, the Nordic states, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, who sometimes give each other points, or even like Greece or Cyprus, who usually give each other 12 points each if they can. Austria doesn't do that. Austria barely ever gives Germany any points. The only time they did give Germany points was when Stefan Rabe participated, and it was for the song Hadi Dudi Dade Da. Anyway, it is very, very close to like a dialect singing or ethnic song in Austria, if you can see. So that's why I'm assuming, would have given points. Germany, I don't think, has given very many points to Austria at all, if any. So it took Austria 48 years to actually have a second win. The first was in 1966 with Udo Jürgens, with Merci Chérie, and then the second, obviously, with Conchita. And it's quite interesting, when Udo Jürgens actually sang, it was his 3rd time. He sang in 64, 65, and he progressively went up the chart. And his song in 64, interestingly, Warum nur warum, actually ended up on the A side of his fellow participant, Matt Monro, and topped the charts in in England as Walk Away. His own song was actually on the B side and didn't do as well. So basically, Austria has had such mixed reactions. I think it's basically how and why they choose their songs. You know, they had 5th placings in 58, 72, 76, 88, and out of those, only 1 song at that particular time was sung in English. And the 6th place with Alfie Poa is quite an interesting 6th place, because it wasn't sung in German per se, it was actually sung in Asturian dialect. So there were 10 years after 2004, there was a stretch of 10 years where there was either no placement in the final or where there was no participation. 2005 was an exception, Global Ukraine, Global Kreiner came last. So did Eric Papalaya in 2007. And then you had Track Shitters in 2012 and 2019 as well. So Austria took several breaks with from Eurovision, the first being in 1969, whereby it's a really strange reason why they boycotted Spain, stating they couldn't support the Franco regime, when the year before they actually gave 2 points to Spain, and Spain actually won by only 1 point, a margin of 1 point. The following year they stayed away because they actually couldn't tolerate the winners. There were 4 winners in that year, and several other countries stayed away. So 73 to 75, Austria stayed away again. The reason's not known, but it could have been the voting system, because all the contestants were allowed to receive some points. The country was ineligible in 98 and 2001, and then you get to 2006. So prior to that, Austria said that because they had previous poor results in the previous years, they weren't going to participate, and they felt that basically the artist's performance was no longer a deciding factor for the win. They did participate in 2007, however came last. So then again, they decided not to participate. And then the contest started changing a little bit because the EBU wanted to get Austria back. So they started to reintroduce the jury voting, however, not in the semi-finals. And Austria said, no, you still can't determine, or there's still problems with the voting in the semi-finals, and it's being more determined politically or without it being sort of a fair judgment. So they didn't actually come back until 2011 in Germany, and that was with Nadine Beiler, who came 18th. So when you then go and look at the national selections, you'll realize that the majority of the selections were actually internal from 1957 to 58, a huge span, 85 to 89, 92 to 95, 95 to 2000, 2007, 2014, where Conchita won, and then 2017 to 2020. So the national selections were varied. You know, 1981, you had Marty Bremer actually producing 3 songs, and people chose the song by sending in a postcard. This postcard qualification system seemed to be used by various countries at various times. Austria used it several times. They had various types of pre-selections going on, but it wasn't always very successful. For example, in 2005, they used a method where 9 states, where they used the telephone in 9 states, and the 10th state was the mobile phone was in use. And I'm not quite sure, the voting must have been weighted in some way, because at the end of the day, Global Kreiner, who won, were actually not the real winner. Elfie Poa won by 45,000 votes, more than Global Kreiner. And they were saying because the telephone votes were in rural areas, it was more heavily weighted towards those regional areas as well as those older people. And Global Kreiner, if you listen to the song, you'll see it's a very ethnic, traditional sound, even though it's sung in English and in Spanish. So basically, 2014, we had the internal selection, we had Conchita winning, and that was great. And then they went back to the national selection process until 2017. And it's quite interesting, in 2017, since 2017, a guy called Eberhard Forcher, who's an O3 or Austria 3 radio announcer, also a musician, he actually now picks or scouts people for the song contest. So languages, Austrian, the majority of time has been so traditional, they have stuck to German. Only 11 songs have actually been sung in English. And of course, you know, they've been the more successful ones at times, like 76, where they came 5th. And of course, 2014, the winning song at that particular time. But Austria also used dialect. And the very first time was with Marianne Ment with Musik in 71. Georg Nussbaumer, Weil es dir gut geht, in 1996 in Vorarlbergerisch. Alfie Power, 2003, Weil der Mensch zählt, and Upper Austrian with the Truck Shitters. Mind you, their song from an earlier final was much better, which was Eau de Tanz. So the only other countries that have used sort of dialect or a form of dialect was France with Breton. Also Spain, I think, used various languages. And then you had Belgium using imaginary languages like Sonomi and Orgelisi in those two songs, as well as Netherlands in another song. So overall, you know, commercially, if you look at Austria, commercially, Austria has not really been that successful out of Austria. Basically, like I said before, the most commercial successful song was translated and covered in English. And Austria's always generally chosen, until the last few years, they've actually chosen people that have been really famous in their country or really popular, like Anita in the 80s, or Mess, Waterloo and Robinson, and the like. So if we have a look at some of the participants, we'll go with Wilfried, for example. It's quite interesting. Wilfried was never really top of the pop, as you would say it, but he was very successful. He placed middle of the road. In 1988, he represented Austria with Lisa Mona Lisa. Not my favorite song. However, when you look at it, he talks about his treatment in Dublin, and you can see why Austria thought about the political stance against Austria at times, because at the time he participated, there was the Kurt Waldheim affair. He was going for president of Austria, was also United Nations UN secretary. However, in 1980s, in the year before, in 1986 election, he was accused of being a Nazi, even though he sort of rejected that. And Wilfried reported back that the other countries avoided Austria, and that he was actually being spat on behind the scenes. So I think that might have influenced his performance a little bit, and certainly did influence the jury votes. Then when you go to Milestones with Falten Wind, they were a very popular rock group, a folk rock group, between 68 and 75. And their members went on to do bigger things. Beatrix Neundlander and Günter Großlercher went on to Schmetterlinge, who represented Austria in 77. Niedermeyer went on for Springtime and the very controversial song Mrs. Caroline Robinson. And Christian Kolonowitz actually ended up being a composer and arranging music. The song was about the impermanence of life. Really lovely song. Schmetterlinge, you can't go beyond Schmetterlinge with their song Boom Boom Boomerang, which most people think, oh God, that's a joke song, but it's not. The Schmetterlinge were a folk polit group who were publishing lyrical, very critical lyrics, and Boom Boom Boomerang was composed as a criticism of the music industry and Eurovision at the time, simply, and the title of the song contains 3 winning songs from 68, 69 and 75. They came second to last, but if you look at the lyrics, you actually realize what they're getting at. The only nonsensical part is obviously the chorus. The rest is about what the music industry is about. So as long as it's a super hit, it doesn't matter what the lyrics are, is basically what they're saying. And they were looking also at the songs of the time, like in 75, one of the biggest hits in Austria was Yuppie Doo from Italy, Adriano Celentano. And basically Yuppie Doo was the chorus. It makes no sense. Then you look down further down the track with 1979, Black Lace represented UK with Marianne, but their hugest hit was Agadoo, which has a silly, silly chorus. So the whole thing was that criticism of music at that time, and maybe even into the future, and even their performance was very tongue-in-cheek. With them, when they turned around, the males actually had tuxedos on with fake faces, showing the duality of music, showing the differences within the music sector. Then you have Alfie Power, who I think very few people realized at the time, because he was singing in Styrian, was actually criticizing the music scene as well. It was all set within a farmyard, and even when you have a look at the staging, it sort of looked like he was making fun of, he was saying, weil der Mensch zählt, so because the human counts, but what he was actually saying, it's just the song, it's parts of the song that count rather than anything else. He made it very interesting. When he did his little dance, he grunted at the end, and that was to represent, you know, the rock groups who make all these wonderful heroic sort of grunting sounds when they sing. The televoters in Ireland actually gave him 12 points, but because of technical difficulties at the time, Ireland went on to the jury vote, sorry, and he didn't get 1 point from Ireland. So he might have actually ended up higher, who knows? And my very, very favourite band, Waterloo and Robinson, they came fifth with the very first song that Austria actually represented. And they came together. They were singing for different groups, came together. They became very popular in Austria. They had a really big hit with Hollywood, which was written by none other than Christian Kolonovitz, who was part of Milestones. And in fact, they were so big that they had 2 hits in 76, which was Baby Blue and Hollywood. And the Ö3 had to pull the hit parade off the air in 77 because those 2 songs dominated and were alternately in first and second place. So really, really interesting. They did very, very well. And on a personal note, when they came on in Austria and when the voting happened, I remember sitting there with my parents and we were watching it, and every time France came and they gave points to France, 1, 2, 3 song, good song, I prefer Austria's, we just would call out Schiebung, Schiebung, oh cheating, they're cheating, that's not right. We were so enthusiastic. And I think overall, when you look at the songs that Austria has sent, Austrians have been totally behind those songs. It's very much the Austrian culture. My biggest surprise was actually Conchita, because Conchita is so different. Yes, we've had bearded ladies, and yes, we've had bearded drag queens before, but Conchita seemed to just blow away and to be picked for a country that is so conservative. You have no idea how conservative Austria is in their minefield, so conservative. It was just mind-blowing. And to see Conchita's triumphant entry into Vienna was just amazing. It was a sea of people. So to me, Austria is quite unconventional. They will send the song they like, except in recent years, I think it's become more sort of commercial the last few years with the talent scouts and the songs being sung in English. But unlike other countries like Sweden, where they've, you know, that it's more, I don't know, US based or US influenced, Austria's been more Austrian. It's so hard to say. And certainly the process being mainly internal makes it kind of unique, but they've never had one singular process in their national finals. So that's it for me at the moment.
Well, thank you very much, Michaela. That was very interesting. And I can really relate to what you said, because doing my research, I think Austria has brought some very, very interesting songs to compare to the majority of other countries. And it's definitely not bland pop songs. They've taken that risk. Okay, well, let's say good afternoon, or should I say good morning, Perth. Vincent, are you ready to be next, please?
Yes, I am. Hello, everybody. Good morning from Perth. Still morning here. It's 11:05. Right. Excuse me. Yes, my presentation is all about the music of the Eurovision Song Contest. A very wide and fertile subject. I've had to be very careful about what I actually deal with, or I'm going to run way over time. So let me begin. From the 1950s, to 2020 Solitude, changing musical styles and messages in the songs of the Eurovision Song Contest. From its inception, the contest was meant to be an evening of light, conservative, family entertainment to bring post-war Europe together in and through harmony. Today I'm taking a broad overview of the evolving musical styles and messages in Eurovision songs, mostly the winning songs, as reflections of European and Western culture and society. These songs have reflected our lives and our journey, and for hardcore fans, these songs are the soundtrack of our lives. From the conservative 50s, when everything was a performance and anything personal was hidden, right up to the present, where everyone is encouraged to declare and share their inner struggles and misfortunes and stand proud, strong, and, if necessary, alone. It's worth saying now that even though it was born about the same time as rock and roll, the Eurovision Song Contest was an apolitical event designed to have maximum appeal to conservative adult audiences of the day, and it's never been at the forefront of musical innovation. It usually took time, sometimes years, for new musical fashions and innovations to percolate through to the audiences of the ESC. 1956 to 1965, dreams of love and French Riviera elegance. I believe it's worth taking a close look at the early years of the contest to understand the foundations of the song contest we all know. The style of songs at the first 1956 contest really set the tone for the first decade of the competition, and they cast into perspective just how much the concepts of popular song and entertainment have changed, or perhaps remained the same. Subject matter in the first decade tended to fall into the following categories. 1. Love and its associated emotions. 2. Picturesque souvenirs of the home country. 3. Sentimental reminiscences of childhood. 4. Poetic evocations of fantasy lands or exotic locales. 5. Cute novelty songs which usually provided up-tempo contrast. The competition was far more like a concert than it is today, and it was held usually in concert halls before a black-tie audience of invited guests. At that time, high aesthetic values were considered indispensable for national pride, and national broadcasters capitalised on having a captive TV audience of millions and employed their own radio and television orchestras to accompany the concert. The musical style of the majority of songs was distinctly rich, part Rodgers and Hammerstein movie musical, part cocktail lounge, with lush violins divided into several parts and lots of harp. Vocal lines were long, crooning, low and seductive in tone. The first winning song was the Swiss entry Refrain, sung in French by young singer Lys Assia, who laments the loss of the loves of her youth in the French chanson style. Other winning songs from the first years were also typical. 1958's Dors mon amour, Sleep on my love, was a lullaby sung in French by baritone André Claveau to his sleeping lover. 1960s winner Tom Pilibi, sung by Jacqueline Boyer for France, was a young woman singing about her lover Tom, more in the style of a children's nursery song than of a love song. 1961's winner, the dark, passionate, sometimes furtive and angular Nous les amoureux, We the Lovers, sung by Jean-Claude Pascal for Luxembourg, is worthy of special mention. Pascal himself was gay, and he revealed much later that the song, in which he sang about the difficulties of a forbidden love affair, was in fact about homosexual love. But the public, or very few people, would have understood this in 1961, as the genders of the lovers were not identified. Typically for the time, anything potentially scandalous or unsavoury was never ever mentioned. However, the song does foretell of the idea popular in Eurovision of our present day, that struggle and adversity can lead to emancipation. One song which didn't win 1958's competition was Italy's Nel blu dipinto di blu, Composed and sung by Domenico Modugno, better known as Volare, it's become one of the world's most popular songs, and arguably the most famous Eurovision song ever, with combined sales, and Alan may have to verify this, of all versions exceeding 22 million.
You're right.
It tells of the feeling of flying high up in the sky with a happiness that comes from being in love. At that time, French Riviera elegance and mystique were very much the fashion. Women could aspire to being as elegant and bewitching as Princess Grace, and men could pretend to be the rich and handsome playboy in his sports car. Reflecting this aesthetic, the most popular language was French, which had the numerical advantage, as it was not just the official language of France, but also an official language in Switzerland, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Monaco. Within the first 10 years of its existence, 6 of the winning songs were also sung in French. When France won the contest in 1958 and 60, it hosted the following year's contests not in Paris, but in Cannes on the French Riviera, glorified in culture as the playground of the rich and famous. Incidentally, there was no rule at the time requiring countries to enter songs sung in their national language, but every country entering did so. To do otherwise would have been considered unpatriotic. The rule that songs must be sung in the national language of the entering country would be introduced later and only applied in 2 periods, 1966 to 72 and 1978 to 98. In the early 60s, the tone was distinctly adult in style, but modern songs started to creep in. In 1963, Monaco's 5th place entry, L'amour s'en va, sung by Yeah Yeah girl Françoise Hardy, was heard. Yeah Yeah was a French musical style trying to assimilate British pop, rock and roll, jazz and French chanson, and it featured very young female singers singing in an almost deadpan way with no vibrato. The Yeah Yeah girl trend continued in 1964 in Copenhagen, which was won by the 16-year-old Gigliola Cinquetti, representing Italy with the song Non ho l'età, aptly meaning No, I'm Not Old Enough, which also won the Sanremo Festival. It became an international hit. This phenomenon continued at Naples in 1965. The Yeah Yeah girl of the moment was 17-year-old France Gall, representing Luxembourg with the song Poupée de cire, poupée de son, Doll of Wax, Doll of Sound, composed and written by the French popular composer Serge Gainsbourg. The lyrics are full of double meanings and the singer cannot decide which doll she identifies with, the doll of wax, the doll of sound, or the fashion doll. Other songs in the competition were all mostly in the old-fashioned style, and Poupée de cire, poupée de son had been booed by the musicians of the Naples Orchestra from the first rehearsal as they disapproved of its galloping drum rhythms and disapproved of France Gall being a clearly untrained singer. With its up-tempo swinging 60s sound, it won the 65 competition and made France Gall an international star overnight. The period 1966 to 79, it was all about family fare, pop bands, and later disco. After 1965, the Eurovision Song Contest slipped back into its middle-of-the-road ways, and for the next few years, entries generally reflected what was heard on radio and seen on TV variety shows. In other words, something for everyone and something escapist. If there was politics involved in Eurovision, it was generally played out behind the scenes. Rivalries and withdrawals were part of the competition then and have remained so to the present day. It wasn't until the 1976 contest that a country entered an overtly political song. This was Panayamu, Panayamu, composed and sung by Marisa Koch of Greece. The song was about the Turkish invasion of Cyprus in 1974. Although several countries fielded up-to-date entries at that time, the overall tone of the contest was firmly middle of the road. Some of the winning songs in this period are perfect examples of this. 1967, the UK won with Puppet on a String, sung by a barefooted singer of limited vocal talent sandy shore. The character song is in quick march time and has a strong carnival feel about it, more like a music hall song than 60s pop. The same year also gave us the mammoth international hit L'amour est bleu, Love is Blue, sung in French for Luxembourg by Greek singer Vicky Leandros, and it came in fourth. 1968 gave us a massive hit, Congratulations, sung for the United Kingdom by the big star Cliff Richard. A bright and joyous song with a very catchy chorus. It was the favourite to win, but Germany gave the Spanish song La 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 6 points at the end to put the UK into second place. And the voting system in place in 1969 led to the presenter's nightmare of a 4-country tie for first place. And this happened in Madrid. And the 4 songs are a perfect cross-section of the style so beloved of the time. France's song Un jour un enfant was a slow, chromatic and very beautiful ballad about a child sung by Frida Boccara. Spain's Vivo Cantando was lively Spanish pop in a horror rhythm sung by Salome, with the male backing singers shouting, hey, during the chorus. The UK had Boom Bang a Bang, a cutesy pop song sung by Lulu in a short pink baby doll dress. And the Netherlands song was De Troubadour, a folk style song sung by Lenny Koer to her own guitar accompaniment about a troubadour in the Middle Ages. From 1971, groups were allowed to appear on stage, and this gave more scope for new dimensions. Groups had been the driving force in popular music for years, and they helped give the ESC a more modern sound. One of the first groups to appear was Peter, Sue and Mark, Switzerland's answer to Peter, Paul and Mary, who went on to represent their country 4 times. Other groups of the period were Sweden's Family 4, Spain's Mocedades, who launched the classic 1973 Eres Tu, and another Swedish group, Nova and the Dolls, famous for using the word breasts in their 1973 song Your Summer. The new rule also allowed internationally successful groups to enter, such as Britain's New Seekers in 1972, and Cliff Richard returned with his own band in 1973 to sing Power to All Our Friends. From 1971 onwards, the musical style slowly shifted away from orchestra-driven to being driven by drums and by electric guitars, and the appearance of bands certainly aided this process towards a new sound, which would change the sound of the competition forever in 1974, when a newly formed Swedish group called ABBA won, singing a song called Waterloo, which had an entirely new melodic and sparkling pop sound. The rest, as they say, is history. Following on from ABBA's win in 1974, bands won in 1975, 76 and 78. The other musical wave to arrive in the late 1970s was disco, popularised by the film Saturday Night Fever and its hit soundtrack. It featured a 4-on-the-floor drum beat, heavily syncopated bass and a string section, often with energetic violin lines. It burst into Eurovision in 1977 with Luxembourg's song Frère Jacques, Germany's Telegram and Belgium's A Million in 1, 2, 3, and gave France its last win to date with L'Oiseau et l'Enfant. Popular again in 1978, it gave Israel its first win with the song Abani Bi, and a hit to Germany in 1979 with Genghis Khan. The rise of bands and disco in the 1970s meant that Eurovision had caught up with the rest of the popular music world and was finally dancing. 1980 to 1989 was the era of synth pop and new technologies. After the short-lived popularity of the disco movement, Eurovision entered the 80s. The development in electronic synthesizers had given rise to a new type of pop music sound without guitars and utilizing a synthesized drum beat. It was called synth pop or electro pop, and Eurovision heard its first such entrant in 1980 from the Belgian 3-man group Telex, one of whom sang lead vocals while the other 2 played synthesizers. And I don't know what the orchestra played, it's impossible to tell. Synth pop songs made occasional appearances, but didn't come to prominence until 1984 with Sweden's winning song Diggiloo Diggiley. Even more so with Belgium's only ever winning song in 1986, J'aime la vie, sung by 13-year-old Sandra Kim. And Switzerland's winning neo-disco song in 1988, Ne partez pas sans moi, sung by a young French-Canadian singer, Céline Dion. By the end of the 80s, electronic music had become part of the mainstream because it was by then a viable alternative to acoustic music. At the beginning of the decade, electronic instruments could not produce the wide variety of sounds needed, and that translated to songs of a simple texture. The rise of electronic music ran parallel with other innovations like the compact disc, and importantly, the Walkman and Discman portable music players, which made listening to music a purely personal experience, and we could take it anywhere and control what we heard exactly. Eurovision continued on its easy listening path with ballads, duets and groups. And there were many noteworthy songs, starting with Johnny Logan's win for Ireland in 1980, What's Another Year. And he was a new masculine type of ballad singer, singing his heart out and wearing white. The sinuous and silky alto saxophone solo we hear at the beginning of the song was a hallmark of the 1980s and 1990s pop and rock ballads. Johnny returned in 1987 to win again with Hold Me Now for Ireland. In 1981, the UK's winning song Making Your Mind Up introduced Eurovision to the new fast-paced style of song, which would also be popular throughout the decade. 1982 saw Germany's first win with a simple and gentle folk-style song called Ein bisschen Frieden, a little peace, that's P-E-A-C-E. And in 1983 saw the last win for Luxembourg with Corinne Hermès' dark and wistful and melodious Si la vie est cadeau, if life is a gift. So whatever the period when it came to winners, there was always variety. The period 1990 to 1998 was an extremely fertile and tumultuous period for the ESC. And I've heard some fans argue that the music of the competition was at its artistic pinnacle in this period. The first winner of the decade was a political song. How far things had changed from the Eurovision of the early years. It was Insieme 1992, composed and performed by Italy's Toto Cutugno. The title means Together 1992 and refers to the year of the Maastricht Treaty, the foundation treaty of the European Union. And the song's a masterpiece of inspiration with a pulsing drum rhythm in the verse, letting loose to an anthemic chorus, reminding us that Europe is not far. There's an Italian song for you, Unite, Unite, Europe, as it said. As far as winners went into the 90s, Insieme in 1992 was the only political song. This seems incongruous as the Berlin Wall was just about to come down. People wanted to sing about events that affected their lives. The years 1993, after the breakup of the Soviet Union and the collapse of Yugoslavia, saw a total of 10 new countries in the competition. This meant that language and culture palette of the contest was much richer. However, despite these social upheavals, almost every song in the rest of the decade was apolitical. The 1991 contest was won by Sweden's Carola, who at only 24 sang a high-powered, up-tempo song, Fångad av en stormvind, captured by a love storm. Then, in defiance of the new cultural diversity, Ireland won the contest 4 times in the next 5 years. A Celtic culture was very, very in, thanks to the Irish singer Enya, who had become immensely popular in the late 80s and early 90s. In 1992, Ireland won with Why Me, a big belting ballad sung by Linda Martin, composed by Johnny Logan. The 1993 winning song was In Your Eyes, an even bigger ballad sung by Niamh Kavanagh. In 1994, Rock and Roll Kids was a quiet reminiscence between 2 friends, and there was no orchestral accompaniment. Ireland won in 1996 with a traditional Celtic folk sounding song called The Voice. The Celtic craze did not stop with Ireland's unprecedented winning streak in 1995, a winning song from Norway called Nocturne was performed by an Irish-Norwegian band, Secret Garden, who specialised in instrumental music. It almost wasn't a song at all, as there were only 24 words in the text and an instrumental break in the middle for a long violin solo. Apart from this, there were some magnificent power ballads in this period, such as Malta's Little Child in 92, Portugal's A Cidade Até Ser Dia in 93, Norway's Evighet in 96, Croatia's Neka mi ne svane in 98, and Malta's The One That I Love, also in 1998. There were several superb duets as well, such as Sweden's Stjärnorna in 1994, Norway's Duet in 94, and Estonia's Kailige Hail in 1996. Disco made a resurgence in the 90s with songs like electro-pop songs like the UK's Ooh Ah Just a Little Bit, and in 1996 and then Israel's Diva in 1998. And disco pop would continue to thrive into the new century. The 1998 contest marked the turning point for the Eurovision Song Contest. It was the last year for the live orchestra, the EBU having decided that the orchestra would be dropped from 1999 onwards and all instrumental accompaniment pre-recorded. Depending on your standpoint, the loss of the orchestra was a retrograde step, eroding an evening of musical performance down into an evening of karaoke. Or was it just an unavoidable sign of the times? I subscribe to the former view. The next period, 1998 to 2018, is actually too big for my survey, as it is too long, there were too many countries involved, and it's just too huge to deal with. The contest had grown so big that countries would try almost any approach, either in musical style or staging or costuming, to win or get noticed. Musical styles encountered were now thoroughly eclectic, but there were still many excellent songs that we all loved. And my final section cuts right up to the present day. In the last 2 years of the competition, I've been struck by the number of songs which deal with mental health issues and loneliness. Yes, there have been other songs about the usual subjects, but the ones I'd like to touch on really stand out. Let's consider some of the songs that start with, let's start with the last winning song of the Eurovision Song Contest, 2019's Arcade, sung by Duncan Lawrence of Netherlands. He sits alone at a piano against a dark background. His song uses the metaphor of an arcade to define love, which he refers to as a losing game. All I know, loving you is a losing game. It's an expressive song with silences reverberating between the phrases. The short chorus features aching, almost wailing cries. Lawrence calls us in and we feel his emotion. I'd like now to turn to, just to finish, with Bulgaria's song from the 2020 competition. The competition which was cancelled after the songs were finalised. It's called Tears Getting Sober, and it's sung by Victoria. Boris Milanov, one of the song's writers, and no one seems to be called a composer or lyricist anymore, said in an interview, at some point it turned out that the message of this song was about today's generation and their problem with mental health issues. If the subject matter sounds dark, fans should be assured that the actual theme of the song is perseverance. And I'm quoting from the text, strained, but my tears are getting sober now, and I've been here before. So weight that I'm holding on my shoulders is going to let go. Your lies burn like sugar in my wounds, so I have sweet bruises. In time I'll forget what you have done. In time my wound will be a scar. How different this is from the songs that are that were in the finals, in the earlier part of the competition. I wonder what's led us to today with so many songs about troubles and disconnectedness. I have no answers, but let me finish by finding some measure of explanation in Michel Foucault's claim that Western man has become a confessing animal. I welcome all comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vincent.
My apologies if I ran over time.
That was extremely interesting. May I just say two things about the sad song? Victoria's song for 2021 looks like it's going to be called Ugly Cry. Staying on the same level. And let's not forget Kate Miller-Heidke, who was also a very sad song about an issue, a mental issue. I also wanted to talk about the Yeah Yeah Girl you mentioned, and France Gall had, of course, an enormous influence on Eurovision. But the last Yeah Yeah Girl was basically 1971, and it was Carina for Spain.
Really?
She was.
I thought the last one that when I read up on it was actually Maciel with La La La.
Yeah. But Carina started a career as a Yeah Yeah Girl in Spain, because Spain was a couple of years later from the rest of Europe due to the religious aspect and Franco and the censorship. Yeah, and just one last thing is you mentioned about the 4 songs winning and the French song Un jour un enfant. There's an amazing version by Agneta from ABBA in Sweden.
I have that. I've heard that. It's very, very beautiful. Sung in Swedish, of course.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this very interesting intake from a musical point of view. And let's say hello now maybe to Jess. How are you, Jess? Can you hear me? Jessica?
Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
There's always one, and it had to be me. I'm supposed to be the pro at this. I'm just going to share my screen as I am old school and need visuals. There we go. All right, so good evening Europe and good afternoon Australia, except for Vincent in Perth, who gets a good morning, I think, still. This presentation is based on ongoing research conducted in collaboration with Chris Hay at the University of Queensland. Now, both separately and together, Chris and I have argued in our work on Eurovision that the live audience, both the one watching live in the venue where the contest is taking place and the one watching live in their living rooms at home, is mobilised in the Eurovision broadcast as an element of the overall mise en scène. That is, the viewers and the fans in particular constitute a kind of set dressing that authenticates the live experience and maps the emotional contours of the performance. So throughout the contest, the television viewer's view of the stage is framed by flag waving, cheering, sometimes booing audience members who obediently bounce up and down or illuminate their phone torches on cue. By incorporating the live audience into the contest in this manner as a production element, the producers have developed a signature kind of atmosphere for the contest as a whole. Yet the live audience, who are often in arenas at a capacity between 7,000 and 10,000, signify a drop in the ocean of that 180 million Eurovision viewers worldwide. Those at home viewers are important to the contest as they constitute the bulk of the voting audience. But they're also important through their live interaction with the event, particularly via social media. Eurovision is a multi-platform event, a live television event that is not confined to the contracted broadcasters, as numerous fans access the event directly through things like the Eurovision.tv live stream, but then it's also multi-platformed in that we're interacting with it on Twitter, in Facebook groups, via Instagram, and then there are numerous websites that also constitute the contest as a whole. For those who do watch it through the local broadcasters, such as SBS in Australia, the at-home viewers are also drawn into the production of the telecast, usually through social media posts, specifically Twitter and Instagram, that is shared in an on-screen overlay. As my own research has found, and as I personally experienced this year when I finally got on the screen, getting a tweet on screen is a significant achievement for viewers, as it allows them to feel incorporated into the event in a manner that's similar to those attending live. Now, this was particularly important for Australian viewers prior to 2015, as the SBS delayed broadcast was at that time the live event here for the majority of viewers. So watching it at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night here in Australia, I'm obviously using my East Coast times here, that constituted the liveness, even though we knew the event had already been over and we were watching a recorded version of it. But because we had the overlay aspect of it, it gave that sense of liveness and made us feel like we were watching it all together, because indeed we were, but it gave that sense of community. Now, what we saw in 2020 was a reversing of the significance of the live audience in the arena and the at-home viewers as production elements, in that we all became the at-home viewers, able to only interact in the online spaces. Now, the emphasis on the live audience as set dressing left producers in 2020 with a problem when confronted with a global pandemic, during which a mass of thousands of sweaty, dancing bodies trapped together for hours on end before returning to different corners of the globe presents a public health nightmare. Indeed, in their official statement cancelling the 2020 Eurovision Song Contest, marking the first time that the contest had been cancelled in its entire history, the European Broadcasting Union, or EBU, highlighted the importance of embodied co-presence and affirmed, and I quote, "It's in the DNA of the Eurovision Song Contest to bring delegations, artists and fans together in one place." In 2020 then, the structuring event around which the Eurovision fandom coheres disappeared. So there was no one place in a physical sense that all of those elements were being brought into. That one place had to now be a sort of multinodal online place instead. So in place of the contest, two parallel offerings developed. The first was EBU-led and built from a series of YouTube videos titled Eurovision Home Concerts to a contest-like replacement live broadcast in May 2020, Eurovision Europe Shine a Light. The second offering was fan-led and included a proliferation of online content that accelerated after the cancellation announcement. The most high profile of which was the weekly Eurovision Again tweet-along. Crucially for our purposes, these two strands cross-pollinated, with the EBU adopting key elements of fan engagement in their offerings, as well as granting Eurovision Again access to higher quality streams of past contests that would otherwise be unavailable to fans. A cynical reading might be to see this as another instance of the EBU's strategy to mobilise fans as mise-en-scène. By adopting fan practices in the official Eurovision content, and by magnanimously waiving broadcast copyright, the EBU is able to co-opt fans into a representational logic under their control. Now, the EBU's official response began with a series of videos dubbed Eurovision Home Concerts, in which past and present Eurovision stars invited fans into their homes by recording themselves singing two songs. One was their own Eurovision entry, which is a chance to revive fan favourites for the established acts, or to get more airplay for the 2020 entries denied the grander stage of the full contest. And the other was a cover version of another artist's song, and I think we can all guess without sound what is being covered right here by Ryan O'Shaughnessy. Now, the selection of this second song was left in the hands of fans, who were able to vote on social media for their preferred matchups. Similarly, as the series went on, fans began to influence the artist selection through concerted social media campaigns. Ultimately, 7 episodes were produced between the 4th of April and the 16th of May, ranging in length from about half an hour to 100 minutes. Across the same period, fans on Twitter mobilised behind the ambitious #EurovisionAgain project, which aimed to replicate the live contest experienced almost in its entirety. In the words of creator Rob Holly, the cancellation got me thinking about the things I'll miss, but also the joyful bits that fans recreate all year round. One of the funnest aspects of Eurovision is the Saturday night tweet-along. It's so packed with love for this bonkers competition. I thought, why not come together every Saturday night and share the moment anyway? The first season of EurovisionAgain was held weekly from the 21st of March to the 27th of June, and we're currently in season 2. That's how popular it was. It thereby outlasted the timetabled contest itself, which was to be held on the 16th of May. And I think it's interesting to also note that it bridges that gap in the Eurovision calendar when people tend to have the post-Eurovision depression, because it's made it a year-round kind of celebration instead of something that, even though obviously the calendar is longer, but the peak of that is obviously in May. Now, EurovisionAgain offered a synced stream of a classic contest, during which fans were encouraged to tweet along as if it was happening live, followed by a new voting system where viewers awarded points to nations as if they were a national jury. And this is also interspersed with other kinds of little videos of information. Catherine Baker is the official Eurovision historian for EurovisionAgain. So it was wonderful to sort of see that kind of commentary being built into it. Now, much of the subsequent fan commentary online obsesses over the difference between the actual vote and this new fan one, but it does also build in some of that retrospective commentary that a lot of us may have, where we might also observe about how songs have changed for us over time, that we hated them at one point and that we love them now. EurovisionAgain thus operates as a kind of revisionist fan history that documents shifting fan tastes and sometimes can result in justice for artists who were robbed. Now, revisiting these past contests in the age of social media has also opened up new interactions between fans and artists, such as Toshi Cameron's recent revisionist win in EurovisionAgain 1990, in which the actual winner, Toto Cutugno, came third. So that's the fan-led response. The flagship pandemic response from the EBU was the live broadcast of Eurovision Europe Shine a Light, which was broadcast on the 16th of May in the time slot that had been set aside for the contest. Hosted by the Dutch national broadcaster, who would have been responsible for the cancelled contest broadcast, Europe Shine a Light brought together the 2020 entrants, 30-second snatches of whose songs were combined with generic messages from their lockdowns, with some legendary Eurovision celebrities. While the presence of Bjorn Ulvaeus from the 1974 winners ABBA was a coup of the evening, it was actually the 2014 winner Conchita Wurst who stole the show when she declared one of the most beautiful parts of lockdown was that she hardly wears underwear anymore. Now, Conchita stood out in part because the overall tone of the broadcast was so dour. While clearly aiming to communicate the seriousness of the pandemic, Europe Shine a Light was drained of the joy that has seen the contest become a global avatar for kitschy camp. In addition to these messages and samplers, the show featured performances by several iconic artists such as Monzemolo, Neda Barzilai, Galiatari and Marija Sarifovic. Can't read today. Now, each of these performances were filmed in a manner that highlighted the world's state of isolation. We have either empty public spaces such as the streets of Belgrade and Jerusalem for Sarifovic and Atari, or intimate private spaces such as backyards and bedrooms for Mons and Neda. Although the more I look at this image, the more I think that's actually his front yard, which is an interesting choice. Now, notably, Italian artist Diodato was the only 2020 artist invited to perform a song live, and this was Domenico Modugno's famed runner-up, in the 1958 contest Ne Bleu de Quimper Bleu. Although it's not clear to me, and maybe some of you can shed light on this for me, why Deodato was singled out, it could be a deal with the broadcaster RAI. It could be that it was that they were keen to include the song itself as part of capturing the history of the contest, and they wanted an Italian artist to sing it. Whatever it was, Deodato's own entry in 2020, Fai Rumore, had gained particular resonance during the COVID lockdown as one of the songs sung by Italians from their balconies, which went viral in videos. So his grab showed a version of the song that was sung in Verona's famed arena. Now, before offering some concluding thoughts, we need to consider briefly what worked and what didn't about these pandemic responses. The most effective elements cohered around two ideas: intimacy and interaction. That is, in the Eurovision home concerts and Eurovision Again, fans felt not only connected to the event, but also able to interact with it in meaningful ways. With its emphasis on wistful solo performances and somber monologuing about the power of music, as well as the decision to not even offer fans a full rendition of each song or the ability to express or authenticate their responses to them, Europe Shine a Light was missing these key elements. The fan experience of liveness was there by compromise. To follow Philip Oslander's more recent definition, the experience of having an active connection to an event taking place now, but somewhere else, whether that somewhere else is miles away or only inches away. It is this challenge of the active connection despite distance, of building a sense of intimacy and interaction to an event happening on the other side of the world, in which Australian Eurovision fans specialise. In a post-pandemic world then, when the options for deploying the live Eurovision audience are radically curtailed, the recently released EBU roadmap for the 2021 contest acknowledges that the most likely scenario involves a socially distanced live audience, most likely without the dance floor that has previously facilitated the most striking mise-en-scène. So the heaving bodies and the waving flags, and they're all sitting on top of each other in our costumes. But what can Eurovision learn from Australia? Will the Eurovision party, an iconic enough element of Australian fan engagement with Eurovision, be highlighted in our first official content broadcast in the 2013 contest, become the predominant mode of live Eurovision fandom? So will we be concentrating more on that at-home experience with an online interaction than we will on the event as a live thing with an audience? And how will that then be mobilized as an element of the broadcast mise-en-scène? So how will we incorporate global overlays of social media engagements, perhaps? Could the official EBU broadcast embrace the parallel social media commentary, as SBS has done with hashtag SBS Eurovision, whose centrality to fan interaction was only confirmed when SBS tried to withdraw it in 2018? The long considered the odd adopted child of the Eurovision fandom, might a physically distanced future allow Australian fan practices to come into their own in the ostensibly European contest? To those questions, we'll leave you with this broader one from our fellow Eurovision scholar, Catherine Baker. What happens to the ability of live music and sporting events to bring collective communities temporarily together and invite them to share the sentiments brought out by particular representations of national and transnational identity? The very thing that Eurovision researchers have long argued that the contest is famous for. When they've depended on gathering crowds, presenters, participants and technical crew together in sizes that could be banned for months or even longer. What will the contest look like from 2021 onwards? Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. That was very interesting. I've got two things to ask you. First of all, one issue I've always thought, when Eurovision has a crowd and public, they charge an enormous amount of money. Mm-hmm. I always felt like basically the audience is props. and they should be paid and not the other way around. What's your point of view on that?
I definitely think that that idea of the mise-en-scène with the audience shows that they are essentially props. Like, we are asked to do particular things. When I was there in 2018, this was for the jury show. I learnt my lesson from this. For who was the rock act? Oh, Hungary. It was my least favorite act. I was pushed aside by their installation of very burly men who were there to catch the singer. And so it's really interesting how they use this idea of the audience as part of the performance all the time. And, you know, we've got to hold up our mobile phones and use up all our batteries. So I don't know if we can get paid, but I would like them to at least pay a part of my electricity bill to make up for the charging of my mobile phone for that kind of thing.
Thank you for that. Also, talking about Diodato, Sanremo Festival now has been pushed to May. That means
Wow.
they won't be able to select the Eurovision artist for 2021. I would say Diodato has a good chance to be reselected. He had a fantastic song, and it's about time Italy really win the contest again, because they've come up with some amazing quality song since they reappeared. Anyhow, talking about Australian fans, let's talk now to Kurtis.
Hello. Before I move on to mine, I just want to link back to Jess's about using the prop as a crowd and relating to Australia Decides, is that in the first edition of Australia Decides, they had fake models who were the audience, but it was very clear that it wasn't. And the fans that were there were quite put off by that. So I was very glad that in the second edition that they actually used the fans as props. And so it was like a win-win.
Yeah. Although they did have that awkward thing in the first one where they selected 3 or 4 real fans in great costumes and brought them into that little special area. And they just stood out because apparently it was the dance school that was providing the backup dancers that were those fake ones. But they were all in these really generic clothes because they couldn't wear branding. And they were all very sort of clean and fit looking. And then you have like these sweaty, sparkly Eurovision fans who were a little bit older coming in. And it was a very sort of striking thing.
Yeah, that was great. So it's great that I follow on from Jess, giving that really broader fan perspective, because I really want to focus on the Australian fan perspective. So I'm just going to pull up my thingo. Hopefully it comes up. Okay, is it up, looking good? The experience of Eurovision and Insider's Look? Yep, awesome. So I want to give my perspective from both the fan club and also from my own personal experiences at Eurovision, both the adult version and also the junior version. So my background, so I'm on the committee of the Eurovision Fan Club of Australia, and I've been on it since 2018. I'm currently the secretary of the fan club. I have a background in education, languages such as Japanese, modern history and international relations. And I'm currently employed as a Japanese teacher on the Central Coast of New South Wales. In relation to Eurovision, my first Eurovision that I was obsessed with was 2012. Sort of saw bits and pieces beforehand. Fun fact, my dance teacher, so I did dancing way back when, my dance teacher was actually a backup dancer for Germany in 2009 for Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I think it is, with Dita Von Teese. So if you look back, have a look for the blonde backup dancer. That's my dance teacher. So I traveled to Eurovision the first time in 2016 when I was 19 to Sweden. And it was a crazy experience, and I actually had met Dami before going to the contest at another live event, so it was really great to actually go with my favorite artist and someone who I knew. And then I traveled to Eurovision in Kiev, as in the picture of me, That was one of my favorite editions of the contest because it was very intimate and not as many fans there, and we were able to interact with the artists a lot more. And then I went to Lisbon in 2018. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to Tel Aviv, but I instead went to Junior Eurovision 2019, which was a very different experience, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. Okay, so just a little background about the fan club. So the Eurovision Song Contest Fans of Australia Network, otherwise known as OGAE Australia as of 2016, officially began in August 2015 following many years of discussion and lobbying for the formation of a unique and identifiably Australian fan club for Eurovision. So before 2015 was Australian fans were kind of in OGAE, the rest of the world, or in other fan groups across Europe, like especially UK as well. So the mission of the fan club is, of course, meet the needs of the growing interest within Australia, providing both an outlet locally for fans to celebrate the contest on home soil through the likes of events, a central point for information about Australia's growing role at the contest, such as its broadcast and participation, and to further the knowledge and promotion of the event within the wider public. As many of the fans within Australia claim European heritage that ties into the song contest, the club also aims to encourage social aspects between local fans, as well as create further bonds internationally in the Eurovision and wider community. So in regards to that Eurovision and wider community, as we are an OGAE, which is Organisation Generale Association de Eurovision, it's French words. So we participate in a variety of contests that fill up that post-Eurovision depression kind of period. So we have the OGAE video contest, the OGAE second chance contest, where you vote for national final songs. That's where it's selected. So for example, the first year was, well, this year was Jaguar Jones. And then we've got the song contest as well, where we select a recent song to represent Australia. And we also have the retro contest as well, which has a niche group as well, but a very dedicated niche group. So let's talk about the growth of Eurovision in Australia, because the growth of Eurovision in Australia coincides with the Australian fan club. So every year Australia has participated at the contest, viewership has increased, with each year passing seeing a record-breaking increase in ratings. So according to the Music Network, Australia had the 5th highest growth in viewing figures in 2019 out of all of the participating broadcasters. So with Australia's growth rate being put at 54.9% between 2018 and 2019, which is massive. Nevertheless, when compared to other key networks, Eurovision viewership draws in small crowds. So I looked at ratings across the board for all networks in Australia, and even with Eurovision, SBS still drew quite a small audience compared to other broadcasters in Australia, such as 7, 10, Channel 9, even ABC. I think when Eurovision's on, SBS surpasses ABC. In my opinion, in order to increase engagement with Eurovision, SBS needs to be able to draw in a sustained audience from other key networks. So they need to be able to grow their base within SBS generally, and hopefully that will grow the Eurovision base. Or that one of those key networks become an associate members of EBU and obtain the rights to broadcast. However, at this stage, as I said, we are seeing a growth in Eurovision, so it's not all bad news. So I now want to compare that to the growth of the fan club. So on the left-hand side of the screen is a graph that our membership coordinator made of our growing membership over the years. As you can see, there are little dips around August, roughly each year, because that's the end of the financial year and members not all, they don't always renew. But as you can see in October 2020, right at the end, we had a dramatic drop in membership and a drop in renewals. So pre-COVID, we had actually estimated that we would by May 2020 surpass 1,000 fans. But due to COVID-19, that dropped down back to 500. Let's have a look. So yeah, unfortunately, due to the cancellation of Eurovision and COVID-19, we've seen a sudden and dramatic decrease in membership renewals. So on the right-hand side of the screen, we have details of either membership growth or membership loss and potential events on why we had that growth or loss. So one big factor is fan ticket packages. So because of our association with the OGAE network, we have access to fan ticket packages, which is a big drawing card for our fan club, but not our only drawing card. But because of the fan packages, we do get a lot of members signing up. However, big events like Midsummer in Melbourne and our initiatives, our online initiatives, which I'm going to discuss in a minute, such as our Top 100, which mimics the Triple J, I think, Top 100, which is around January. Also draws in, for example, as you can see, a 545% increase in membership. And then as you can see, going down the list, COVID-19 and the cancellation of the Eurovision Song Contest shows a decrease in our membership. So talking about how I just mentioned before about fans taking the online initiative, our club also had to change our focus on what we wanted to do for our membership and to satisfy our membership needs. So in the past, we did have online initiatives such as our OJE contests and other such initiatives from time to time. However, because of the COVID-19 and we couldn't actually host live events, which we normally would, we had to resort instead to online platforms, which for some of us who may not be as tech savvy on the committee, has been a big, big change. So one example was our preview party actually had to become online this year. So we were supposed to get Hera Bjork, who represented Iceland, can't remember the top of my head, 2009, I think, earlier maybe?
2010.
2010, thank you. I should know these. Yeah, so we had Hera Bjork come, well, she was supposed to come, but because of the COVID-19, she was not able to. So we still wanted to have our, annual preview parties, so we just had to put it onto an online format. And so our members being the key to our organization, we had a very strong membership interaction and membership engagement in this event. And this has continued on with multiple initiatives such as our Lip Sync Festivalen or Lip Sync competition, where we are coming into our, I think, 3rd edition of it. We've also had our own version of the home concerts as well. We've had at least 2 editions from my knowledge, where fans have submitted cover versions of Eurovision songs as well. We also developed, we have strong ties with SBS because it's a really great partnership of SBS using that, like just mentioned, that mise-en-scene, that interaction with fans. So SBS has developed really strong ties with our fan club. And so because SBS held their own version of Shine a Light, which was Eurovision Big Night In, SBS really drew on that fan engagement and included some of the club members in the actual broadcast, in media promotion, and of course on social media, Twitter, Instagram as well. So now I want to talk about my experience with Junior Eurovision 2019 and then have a little kind of comparison at Junior Eurovision 2020 and then look into the future. So at first I want to discuss my personal experience. I have a really big interest in the role Indigenous languages have at the contest and Kazakhstan's role at the junior contest and possible further implications. So there's me at the contest. I was actually luckily enough to be able to get a press pass for the contest. So I was the first person from OGAE Australia, representing OGAE Australia, to gain a press pass at a Eurovision event. Oh, well, no, they had Tel Aviv as well. I think we only had fan passes, yes. Yeah, so I was the first press for the club. I was actually one of the only Australian media organisations at the junior edition of the contest. So this is probably because the junior edition doesn't really get the ratings as the adult contest does. And this is across the board, across Europe as well, but even Australia as well. The only other media that were there were from the host broadcaster at that time, which was ABC Me, but now it's gone back to SBS. So my overall thoughts on the junior contest. So it offers a more relaxed and intimate atmosphere in comparison to the adult contest. This may be a result of fewer participants, especially from the participants that would normally draw in high audiences, such as the Nordics, so Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, who previously took part but now don't, and Spain, who has now begun taking part, and also France as well. And this is from ESC Plus in an article written in December 2017. There are two other kind of misconceptions about Eurovision and relating to Junior Eurovision, is that people kind of see Junior Eurovision as just a kind of child talent show, just as another child talent show. But then looking at the children aspect, so since it's about children, there's no politics, right? So I want to address the child talent show. So first I wanted to talk about the Georgian Junior Eurovision boot camps. So I drew a lot of this information from a press organisation called ESC Insight, who we have OGA Australia has a strong relationship with, and who I was able to learn a lot from when I was at Junior Eurovision in 2019. So for Georgia, they, like many, I think, kind of broadcasters, they get their junior artists from talent agencies. But Georgia actually goes further and kind of, makes a boot camp. And so, as cited in this article, the secret is hard work, dedication, and perfection. So they train 7 to 8 hours a day, 50 hours a week, and that makes 1,000 hours of practice for just the 3 minutes on stage. So acts from other majority of countries competing will not have been dedicating such effort to their performances. So it is little wonder that I, or the author, and both myself have been mesmerized by the ability of Georgian acts and their millimeter perfection and note perfect harmonies. So Georgia has a very proud musical tradition, and they have also been able to bring a great variety to the junior edition to the contest, and they have won the most amount of times at the junior edition of the contest, but have not won at the adult contest. So there seems to be some kind of disconnect or some kind of winning kind of process that they seem to get. And then kind of this idea that there's pushy parents. My personal observation of being at Junior Eurovision is that their parents obviously have to be there, but at the 2019 edition of the contest, especially the more teen kind of acts, especially I got to know Mila Moskov, who represented North Macedonia, Eliana from Malta, and the girl from Ukraine, whose name I can't remember at this point in time, but the girl who represented Ukraine at the Junior Eurovision 2019, they all had a very strong, they also co-wrote their songs and had a really strong impact on how they came across on stage. And so I believe that the Junior Eurovision gives young artists the opportunity to work on their craft of music rather than just parents kind of pushing them into the limelight. And yes, challenging the misconception from that. Okay, so since it's about children, there are no politics. One key event that relates to politics that was very controversial at the time was when Azerbaijan and Armenia danced together at the Junior Eurovision Song Contest 2013 after party. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to go, but my friend and colleague, Charlene Wright, told me about this event that occurred, that the delegations were very shocked and worried about Azerbaijan and Armenia dancing together, and the photo being posted on the official Junior Eurovision Facebook page because of the relationship between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And because of this photo, there was a lot of backlash. There's also a lot of cultural and language barriers that occur at the contest, which is kind of obvious because not everyone can speak English, which seems to be the universal language at Eurovision, which is very interesting since originally it used to be French. So it will be very interesting next year when, spoiler, the winner of the Junior Eurovision contest this year was France. So it will be in France. It'll be very interesting to see if they want to pursue more of a French language base. And Junior Eurovision has a very common, very unique thing compared to the adult contest is that it has a common song. So all of the contestants come together and sing a common song. So I think that is excellent for unifying and breaking down those cultural and language barriers. And just going back to my own personal experiences at the contest and looking at the relationships that the children built together, was that there were cultural and language barriers, but because of the activities they participated in, such as their own kind of version of Euro Club, which was just fun games and stuff, and this common song, was that these children were able to build bridges to countries which they may never have. So for example, with Azerbaijan and Armenia. Okay, I want to quickly talk about, yep, all good?
Yep, so.
That's all right. I haven't got anyone's faces up, so I can see the screen. So just let me know if I'm going over or any issues. So very interesting point about Junior Eurovision compared to the adult version is especially these days, is the inclusion of Indigenous languages or native languages and minor nations at the contest, such as Wales. So with Junior Eurovision, 75% of the song has to be in the native language. So seeing that old rule of Eurovision being brought into Junior Eurovision, I think it's an excellent rule to have. You know, you want to give people the right to choose their language, but as I discussed with my interview with the Irish contestant Anna Kearney about the importance of the Indigenous language at Eurovision, she states that, and you can see all the YouTube clips on the OGAE Australia YouTube channel if you want to have a look for yourself, is that she states that it is very important to showcase their culture through their language. And I also interviewed the Welsh contestant Eden Mai, who said that a similar thing, in that that they want to showcase their tradition and how it is in Wales, and that they want to showcase it to the whole world. So yeah, so my thoughts are, singing in the native language helps give a sense of identity and define a solid sense of nationhood. So this is very important for Wales because Wales is a part of the United Kingdom. They don't really have their own identity, but Eurovision, Junior Eurovision solidifies and gives them a voice in their own unique identity as Welsh people. And also involves the rest of the world, as well as within their own country, about their language and culture, which I love. So now I want to move on to Kazakhstan. So Kazakhstan is a little favorite of mine. I've always been, had an interest in Kazakhstan, especially, so I'm only a kind of a recent fan compared to our other panel members. But with the Christian Kostov in 2017 being half Bulgarian, half Kazakh, I thought it was very fascinating to have people from Asian countries and countries that are not within Europe at the contest. So, but Christian Kostov is obviously not the first Asian singer on the contest. For example, in 2012, France was represented by, what's her name? But yeah, they were represented by an Indonesian artist. So when I attended JESC last year in Poland, I was lucky to develop a strong bond with the Kazakh delegation, which is a partially state-owned broadcaster, the Khabar Agency. They actually sent their first deputy chairman of Khabar Agency, Renat Kadaryev, who I was lucky to meet and talk to. For Kazakhstan, they see Junior Eurovision of vital importance. Their entry into the European market and sphere is vital, and Junior Eurovision and maybe eventually Eurovision may be their ticket into the European Union and gaining access to trade within Europe as well. So the Khabar Agency first became an associate member of the European Broadcasting Union in 2016. Only full members of the EBU have automatic right to take part in events such as Junior Eurovision. And so as a result, Kazakhstan planned a PR mission so that happened during the 2017 junior edition of the contest in Tbilisi. And a delegation from Kazakhstan visited, and young stars gave performances in a bid to impress just as Australia did years prior. So Kazakhstan sees Australia as a great model for entering the Eurovision contest and having closer ties to the European Union. Talking about ties to the European Union, I'm going off topic. The ODA Australia fan club was actually able to develop ties with the European Union consulate in Canberra, who were actually hoping to sponsor our live event, our live preview party this year, but because we didn't have a live event, unfortunately that fell through, but hopefully in future years, our association can have events that relate to and hopefully sponsored by the EU, and we also had connections with the Dutch embassy as well. So Kazakhstan sees Australia as a kind of a model for their ties and connections to the contest. So this bid to impress is still evident in the enthusiasm on stage and off. This can be seen by the 2 second place wins and a 3rd place win upon debut in 2018. So this Junior Eurovision that just happened yesterday at 3 a.m, they came 2nd place. So Kazakhstan has a lot of support, and looking on social media platforms and online and looking at YouTube comments, there is a massive support for Kazakhstan at the Junior Eurovision edition of the contest.
Okay, thank you very much, Carter.
Yep.
Just quickly, one thing. One issue I have with the junior competition is all the songs are basically written by adults. And it's a little bit an issue because kids are supposed to sing kids' songs. Anyhow, we're running out of time. So let's see. Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. And let's talk about Eurovision, who got cancelled this year, but it was not the first time that Eurovision was in trouble. There are going to be a few reasons why. The first time is when broadcasters refusing to host the competition for financial reasons. It happened in 1960. The Eurovision was hosted by the BBC in London because the Netherlands had declined due to the expense, having previously hosted the year before. Hosting Eurovision is actually quite an expensive part of the budget for a TV station. That was Netherlands' second victory, and basically they declined it. And the United Kingdom was chosen to host after they were finishing in 2nd place. The second time was again in 1963 and again hosted by the BBC in London, when this time France declined again due to expenses, having previously hosted the contest in 59 and 61. That was France's third victory in the contest in just 5 years, following their win in 58 and 1960. The 2nd and 3rd place at that time, Monaco and Luxembourg, also declined when offered to host the contest. The 3rd time was in 1972, and the BBC hosted the contest in Edinburgh this time because Monte Carlo, who had won the year before with Sowden, was unable to provide a suitable venue. It was not just a question of money. They did not have a big arena or theater at that time to have enough people sitting in the audience. That was, by the way, Monaco's first and only victory at the contest. And the fourth time was actually in 1974, and that was hosted by the BBC in Brighton. Again, when Luxembourg declined due to expenses to host the 73 contest. They had won back-to-back the contest, and in 73 was Anne-Marie David, and the year before was Vicky Leandros. Of course, Brighton is one of the most important Eurovision because you had big names there. You had ABBA, you had Olivia Newton-John, Liliola Cinquetti, and Mouse and McNeil. The fourth time it was declined again for expenses, was basically in 1980. And again, it was hosted in Den Haag in Holland. This time it should have been hosted in Israel, but again, back-to-back victory proved too costly for Israel to put the contest again together. And the fifth time, there was a big question mark, was in 1997, because Ireland had just won again, following the win in 1996 with Elmar Queen in Oslo, and her song The Voice. And that was the seventh time that Ireland hosted the event and the fourth time in 5 years. And they were running out of places to host it. At that time, there was some interesting rumor. The first one was the broadcaster was going to team up with the BBC in Northern Ireland. And the second one, which is of course even more interesting, there was a bid to host the contest at Sydney Opera House with the Australian broadcaster SBS in Australia. Because SBS had been broadcasting the contest for 14 years. And it would have been to mark the 60th anniversary of the contest. Australia later on got basically offered to have a wild card in Copenhagen. Oh no, sorry, in Vienna. But we personally appeared the first time in Copenhagen as a show part of the Australia. Having said that, neither of these two rumors have been confirmed by the Irish broadcaster. SBS has been quite coy about it. I think it might have been just one of these ideas, which would have been great, but with the time difference, that would have been difficult. Another reason the Eurovision almost didn't take place was after the 4 winners mentioned by Vincent, 1969 produced 4 winners. And from the 4 countries, which country would have to produce the next Eurovision contest? Now, Spain had already done that year when the 4 winners won. France and the UK had been producing it enough time, and Holland was not that, or the Netherlands was not that keen on producing again the contest for financial reasons. The other issue, of course, on that, after that, Austria, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Portugal, and Sweden decided to boycott the contest. And basically, that was putting a different view. Are we going to keep on producing Eurovision with such a small numbers? Portugal had hosted the national final. It was won by Sergio Borges, but fortunately they reached 12 countries and the Eurovision was saved because that was a minimum country they needed to have to produce a contest. Interesting in that year is it was the first time they produced the postcard announcing the singers and the countries. And that was actually to fill up the time to make the show long enough, because otherwise it would have been done too quickly. Another reason why the contest almost stopped was the strikes. Before 2020, the closest Eurovision ever came to being cancelled happened in 1977. The BBC strike, camera in action. The contest was supposed to take place in England after the win of 1976 of Brotherhood of Man and Savior, Kisses for You, for me, sorry. Everything was set up. The newsreader Angela Rippon was selected. Wembley Stadium, the Wembley Conference Centre was open on the 2nd of April, and Eurovision would have started, but the strike stopped the contest. So they had to push it. First of all, there was a call for the Netherlands to step in to host at the last minute the contest, but the camera crew refused in solidarity with their British counterpart. Therefore, there was more discussion, and the contest basically took place 5 weeks later on the 7th of May. That was really the closest time the contest didn't take place. There was a natural disaster twice. And this time Norway was very unlucky about the natural disaster. The first time was 1986, and Bergen was selected, and the show was supposed to be on the 3rd of May. The Chernobyl accident happened on the 28th of April. So therefore, there was big question, are people gonna go so close from Chernobyl? It was really sad because at the time Norway hosted the Eurovision for the first time, and they had spent an enormous amount of money to present Norway. They were so proud of having it. And at the end, people decided to still have it, and it took place, and it was okay. The other time was, again, for Norway in 2010. The show was on the 23rd of May, and we all know that there was a big Icelandic volcano deciding to create havoc. A lot of flights started to be cancelled, and there was question, will we have the possibility of having the delegation and artists to fly to Oslo? Fortunately, the cancellation of the flight was only about 7 days, and the Eurovision could take place. Another issue, of course, for Eurovision was confronted with was wars. As Dean Buletic, who's written actually a very, very interesting book, which I can recommend, is basically called Post-War Europe and the Eurovision Song Contest. And he specialized very much into the politics and war system. Now, according to him, 1991 was supposed to be held at the seaside resort of San Remo, which is the home of the annual Festival of Italian Music. It was for the organizer to pay tribute to the Italian festival that inspired actually the creation of Eurovision. But host broadcaster Rai made a last decision to move it to Rome due to ongoing instability in the Balkan and the Gulf War region to better ensure the security of foreign delegations. This caused serious organizational problems and delays. But there was call for Yugoslavia to be banned because at that time there was in 1991, there was a declaration of independence in Croatia and Slovenia. But at the end again, Yugoslavia sent a participant, and it would be the last time that they participate as a Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia with a song sung in Serbo-Croatian by Baby Doll called Brazil. How bizarre was it that Yugoslavia had a song calling Brazil? This was also a very kitsch performance, which you can receive now from time to time in every show. They're bringing all the funny parts of Eurovision. The last time was also very difficult was in 2017 for Ukraine. The fighting in eastern Ukraine, Donbas region, was a serious security issue. More than 10,000 people had been killed in this persistent conflict. 2,800 were civilians. Nearly 2 million people had been internally displaced and put at risk if they remain in their home. Russia had originally planned to participate, but announced its withdrawal on the 13th of April 2017 after singer Julia Samalyova was banned from entering Ukraine to give a performance by virtue of having traveled directly from Russia to Crimea in 2015, a region that was annexed by Russia in 2014, which is illegal under Ukrainian law. Having said that, I was in Kiev and I never felt more secure during a contest. There was everywhere the army, police people. Every 5 meters when you were coming out of the Euro Club, you had a soldier lining up the streets. They were really, really, how would you say? They were really scared that there would be an attack by a Chechen terrorist. They had been warned about it. And then, of course, the last time was Tel Aviv in 2019. The Israeli military had extensively deployed the Iron Dome, a real defense battery around Israel in advance to the Eurovision Song Contest to prevent another escalation after the previous week's violence. Politics and controversy, as well as security concern, had threatened to overshadow the competition, especially after a flare-up the week before between militants in Gaza who fired nearly 700 rockets to the country and the Israeli army, which responded with more than 300 airstrikes. 4 people in Israel and more than 20 people in Gaza were killed in 2 days of fighting before mediators managed to restore a ceasefire, all of it coinciding with the start of Eurovision rehearsal. Protests also came from religious ultra-Orthodox Jews in the country, angered that the contest requires people to work and perform during the Sabbath, which occurred from sundown on Friday until sundown on Saturday. Israel webcast actually of the Eurovision Song Contest semi-final was hacked with animated images of explosions in host city Tel Aviv, which the national broadcaster blamed on Hamas militants. The hacking actually of Cannes website did not affect the regular television relay of the show on Tuesday night in Israel and abroad. Widespread calls from participating artists and broadcast partners to boycott the contest. There was a group called Boycott, Divestment and Sanction, which really tried to stop Eurovision to take in Israel because of, they thought it would distract attention from its war crimes against Palestinians. In January 2019, British figures including Vivienne Westwood, Peter Gabriel, Roger Waters, Mike Lee, Julie Christie, and a lot more signed a letter calling on the BBC to cancel the coverage of 2019 and were requesting artists not to go and participate to represent their country. Indeed, Roger Waters urged Madonna to pull a planned performance at the event, but she declined to do that. In February, Ukraine also pulled out after its competitor selection process became entangled in political tension with Russia. At the end, Eurovision took place 2019, and that was the last one we had live. Another issue were building issues. Baku in 2012. Azerbaijan wanted to present the country to the best image. To the lead up of the contest, there was met with political concern and protests surrounding the host country as well, including the human rights record and allegation by advocacy group that Baku was carrying out forced eviction in the construction of the contest venue, along with objection to the contest presence of Iranian officials who felt that the event was anti-Islamic because it was, according to them, a gay parade. But the real issue was a lot more concerning. The Baku Crystal Hall built for Baku's staging of the Eurovision Contest 2012 was almost not finished in time. The construction time of just 8 months, from September 2011 to April 2012, was a major challenge in the development of this sport and concert complex. The construction of the arena was expected to be completed by 31 March. However, there was a delay of 3 weeks because of weather conditions, and the building was finally completed on the 26th of April, less than 1 month before the first semi-final. It was not the first time Eurovision had risk to be cancelled. It was the first time it did get cancelled. talking about political tension, it's very interesting because Eurovision is meant to be apolitical. It's been anything but apolitical. Politics has been part of Eurovision since its inception. I'm very doubtful that Eurovision had the choice whether to be or not to be political. If the ESC does indeed mirror the current European cultural climate, it is then likely to reflect the social, political, and economical tensions of the outside world, unable to escape being influenced by the governing reality of each participating nation. Behind the kitsch and lyrics and camp costuming is a song contest that mirrors post-war Europe's myriad fractures and crises, from Cold War tension to cultural shifts. Certainly, the origin of Eurovision Song Contest are apolitical. Initially, it was about putting on a simultaneous television program across Europe, according to Dean Vuletic. But from its very first inception, the contest had been staged for governments and contestants to signal rivalries, make statements, and send messages. The Arab reaction, for example, for Israel participation has been very vocal. Because of Israel participation, many Arab states that are eligible to participate do not do so. Tunisia, Morocco, and Lebanon are cases in point. Morocco did participate once. Tunisia was about to participate in 1977. They even had selected their song, but at the end they decided they withdrew because of Israel. In 1978, during the performance of the Israeli entry, the Jordanian broadcaster suspended the broadcast and instead showed pictures of flowers. When it became apparent during the later stages of voting that Israel was going to win the contest, they abruptly ended the transmission. Afterwards, the Jordanian news media refused to acknowledge the fact that Israel had won and announced that the winner was Belgium, which has actually come in second place. By coincidence, Israel did not broadcast the victory either, as the Israeli IBA television didn't buy enough broadcasting time. The victory was broadcast the next day. At the time, Israeli television was starting and was still in black and white. Many and most Israelis therefore watch international events in colors using the signal from neighboring Jordan. As Jordan did not broadcast the Israeli entry and the IBA did not broadcast the result part of the event, well, the win only became known as a result of a radio broadcast in Israel. Politics, from the day one, it's been disguised. 1956, Germany, still coming to terms with the legacy of the Holocaust, was represented by Walter Andreas Raatz in the first contest with the song Im Wartesaal zum großen Glück, which finished in second class. He was a Jewish man who had spent some time in a concentration camp during World War II and was then the poster boy for German innocence. The song translated to "In the waiting room for great luck" advised that people should live for the present rather than get stuck in the past and risk the joys of life passing them by. The other interesting entrance was from the Dutch submission, the Vogels from Holland, the Birds of Holland, performed in Dutch by Jetty Pearl, who was also a Dutch singer and resistant member of the Jewish origin. The song was actually a disguised sweet song, but from the point of view of Anne Frank, watching from a window. Anne Frank was a German-Dutch diarist of Jewish origin, one of the most discussed Jewish victims of the Holocaust, and she gained fame posthumously with the publication of the Diary of Young Girl, in which she documented her life in hiding from 1942 to 1944 during the German occupation of the Netherlands. We could keep on talking about all the politics. It's been every single year has brought up some politics, from anti-war songs to, as Vincent mentioned, the Greek song protesting about the invasion of Turkey. So I think we've covered a lot of ground today, very different. As a panel, we all brought something completely different, which was very interesting. And let's see what Nina has to say. Nina, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Let me just start the video. I love the panel. I loved every single presentation. I just have a couple of comments. One for Vincent. I loved his quote saying that Eurovision was meant to be an evening of light and conservative Western entertainment. I absolutely love the quote. However, just to remind that in 1961, Yugoslavia joined, a communist country. They only had communist purges really in 1944-45, so not even 2 decades ago they were killing thousands of citizens for being opposition forces to the government. Yet they were allowed to join Eurovision in 1961 as a new face, a bridge between East and the West, which I found fascinating. At the same time, Belgrade was hosting a non-allied movement conference. Again, another organization between the East and the West. So I think it was all part of that image projection and willingness for the Western Europe to accept somebody who was very communist, but open communist country as a possible sign for democratization, hope for the future. In terms of other comments, I think I should probably give them brief because we're a little bit over time, but every single presentation could in some way or another be written down perhaps. So I think there is a lot of potential, especially about junior Eurovision. We don't know anything about it in terms of from the Australian context and like you said, Kurtis, Kazakhstan's victory. How do we lobby all these other countries as Australia once we're back in the game? So I won't hold anyone any longer, but it was absolutely fantastic panel, and I hope we will continue this conversation.
Okay, can I have the last thing? As a song, as it is a song contest, let's finish with one. Doing my research in the book and mention about it, Nel Blu di Pinto di Blu, popularly known as Volare. It represented Italy at 1958, and it is the song, the most covered song from Eurovision, and it sold 22 million copies worldwide. What's really interesting is you have basically every Italian artist has covered the song, but also big names like Dean Martin, Dalida, Ella Fitzgerald, Petula Clark, Cliff Richard, Louis Armstrong, Ray Charles, Barry White, Paul McCartney, Nina Simone, Liza Minnelli, just to name a few. So something which is interesting I did through my research is an artist we're going to hear his version almost represented Malta at Eurovision, and this artist is David Bowie. He was basically participated in the second edition of the Malta International Song, which was held on the 25th of July 1969. He performed 2 songs. He came second, and Malta had decided that the song would represent Malta at 1970, but EBU didn't let them be till the following year. So let's finish basically this session with a song of the cover of David Bowie, Volare. And thank you everyone for joining. It was a fantastic panel. Thank you.
Ti stavi lassù nel blu, dipinto di blu, felice ti stavi lassù. Penso che un sogno così non ritorni mai più. Mi dipingevo le mani.
Recognize this face?
Bloody
You're more beer ads than anyone else. No one told you to do this.
Oh, well, bloody ads on YouTube now. Thank you, everyone. It was fantastic. Thank you